Learn how to use and maximize Luminar Neo from a wannabe travel photographer. You'll learn the basics and some advanced concepts. Best of all, the raw files in this tutorial are available for download so you can practice with me. Let's get started. We'll quickly go over the Luminar Neo interface. Right now I'm in the catalog, which is the library or database of my photos, and there's some quick organization sections right here, including the recently added, the trash, and so forth. And then there's some folders or albums you can organize the photos into. When you use some of these Gen AI tools or merge tools, they'll automatically create a folder and put the photos or the saved photos in a new folder here with a respective name. Then we have the presets here, and the Luminar Neo automatically suggests some presets. You can also add your own presets if you have some free or purchase ones, and then you can also buy some presets. The extras information here, or the icon here, you can also purchase presets from here and some extra stuff from creators that use Luminar Neo. One thing that might be interesting is the education section. So there's some courses here, including some ebooks. And then you can also maybe look at the referral section. So this section might be important to you. If you decide to refer Luminar Neo, you can get like a $20 coupon and so forth. And you can get this code here if you want. So I'm just going to close this. And here we have the export section. And I'll just go back to the catalog. So there's these add photos as well if you do want to import photos. And the main section you'll be using is this edit section here with all the neat Luminar Neo tools, including some basic develop tools. And then we get into some advanced landscape, creative, and some portrait tools here. And then let me just go back to the catalog. So to open this photo or to maximize it into like a full screen or a loop view, I can just double click on this. And I can double click on it again just to close it down. If I double click on it, you can see there's some thumbnail photos on my library here. I can shrink this if I want. Then there's also like the before and after split screen right here. And let me show you a quick example of that. I'll go to the develop tool and I'll go to color. I'll increase the saturation and the vibrance. I'm overdoing it right now just to give you a sample or an example of the before and after. I can hide that splitter tool here, and I can just click on this tool right here, this preview, to show the before and after. I can also click on the backslash right here, and that also is a quick shortcut for the before and after view. There's also a shortcut for the catalog presets and edit here. So I can press for the catalog, the keyboard shortcut is L, and the keyboard shortcut for presets is the letter T. And for this is edit. So for catalog, just remember it represents the library. So I can press, let's say for the edit, I can press E. For presets, I can press T. And for catalog, I can press the L key, which is library. And then we also have the help section here. So if you want to see a quick onboarding, you can click right here and it'll go through a few onboarding options right here. I'm going to close that. What you may also want to take a look at is the user guide. If you do have some questions or you're in doubt of some of the features, you can go to the Luminar Neo user guide, which will open up in a new browser. Now, just going back to this catalog, these generative tools and the merge tools and the resolution enhancement, I won't be teaching these in this tutorial as I have separate videos for each one of these. So we'll be mainly working with the edit section just to make some photos pop. In Luminar Neo, there's a few ways to import photos into your catalog or library. Right now I have a clean catalog. I deleted the previous catalog. So one way you can do it is just click on add photos. And right now I have this Luminar Neo course and I can add this entire folder, or I can select or shift click different photos and add them. The other option is going to your file menu here, go to add folder with images. The main way I like to import photos into Luminar Neo, because I mainly care about editing and not organizing my library or anything like that. I just like go to my folder or wherever my photos are. I'll just click on a few photos and then I'll just drag them into that just like that. And now you can see there's these single image edits or these recently added photos and so forth. These will change as I make different type of edits, and right now there's nothing in the trash. The other thing is about these catalogs. The default catalog Luminar Neo already creates for you, and when you have a catalog, it saves the information of your edits. So whenever you edit information here, then you close Luminar Neo and you reopen it back up, it'll reopen the same catalog and it'll have your edits saved and it'll have it saved in the catalog. One other thing is about the catalog, it's usually saved automatically in your pictures folder. So if I go to File, Catalog, and Show in Finder, you can see here I named this one Luminar Neo Tutorial. It might have like a default or untitled name in your case, and it does keep backups. And these backups, including the main Luminar Neo catalog, it's on my hard drive. So you may want to save it in like a cloud storage, your catalog such as Dropbox, or back it up yourself into a external hard drive, just in case your hard drive crashes, you don't want to lose your edits. In my case, I keep resetting my catalog or resetting my edits in Luminar Neo, so I don't back up my catalog other than these automatic backups that Luminar Neo does. The other thing about catalogs is usually you only need one catalog. However, if you want to create more catalogs or just do whatever you want, or you just have like, let's say travel photos for one catalog, and then you're a professional photographer and you have a wedding catalog for your clients, you can do that. But it's usually better just to use like the folders and albums to organize your photos instead of like creating or opening up new catalogs. When you're deleting photos from your catalog or Luminar Neo, you want to make sure you don't permanently delete your photos by accident. So for example, right now I'm in the catalog, and let's say I don't like this photo plus these two photos, so I can shift click on them. I can right click on it, and then I can move these photos to the Luminar trash. You can also see the keyboard shortcut Command Delete, or it could be Control Backspace. Alternatively, I can just, let's say, select one photo. So I'll select this photo and I'll drag it into the trash. So right now I moved that one photo into the trash and it's gone from my catalog or from my all photos. Before this was 25 and now the number is 24. Now if I go to the trash and if I right click on the photo, I can put it back into my catalog or into my library, or I can delete it. But keep in mind, when you delete a photo from the Luminar Neo trash, it's going to ask you to move it into the system trash. So in other words, this is the process of removing the photos or deleting the photos from your hard drive or wherever it's saved into the system trash. Or in other words, you're also permanently deleting, or you're planning to permanently delete these photos. So just keep that in mind when you're moving these photos into the trash. Anyways, I'm just going to put this photo back. Now you can see it's back there. So just keep that in mind. Do not accidentally permanently delete your photos when you're moving the photos into the trash. Luminar Neo allows us a few ways to sort images. So we can sort them by capture time, edit time, file name, and so forth, including ascending and descending. But there's a few additional ways of flagging and rating the photos. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the size of these thumbnails to large, and then I can start rating these photos. So you can see these stars and the favorite icon right here, which is a heart, or I can reject it. So this one I can give it a 3. I'll reject it, and you can see the thumbnail is grayed out. This one I'll give it a 5 stars. This one I'll give it a 5 stars. I will heart this. I will heart this. And I can also click on this image right here. And you can see the EXIF information. I took this with a Canon 6D. Here's the lens, ISO, focal length, shutter speed, and aperture. But I can also click on the heart or favorite icon right here. And you can see it showed up right here. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this panel. So I can minimize this panel just like that. The other thing is I can hide the information here. So right now you can see on detailed view. So it shows like the file name and the rating information. What I can do is I can go to minimal view, and now you can see like the file name and the rating information is gone unless I hover my mouse over the thumbnail. Let me just go back to detailed view. Another thing I can do is instead of like clicking on these icons here to mark it as a rating or give it a star and putting a favorite or hearting it, I can go to the image menu here, and then I can set the flag, and I can use the keyboard shortcut of P for favorite, X for rejected, and U for unmarked. And the ratings are just numbered from 0 to 5 and so forth. So I'm just going to change the thumbnail size to small, and then I can change the rating, or I can change the sorting by rating here. So let's see how it sorted it. So this is by, looks like it's starting from 0 stars. So what I'll need to do is go to descending. Now I can see it's going from 5 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, and these have no ratings. And the same thing goes for the flagging. So usually for the flagging and the rating, you don't need to do it if you have a small catalog or a small library. But once your library starts getting really massive and it gets into the thousands of photos, you may want to start rating and favoriting your photos, especially when you first import the photos. You may want to like cull through them or rate them and decide which ones you want to delete and so forth. Let me just bring this side panel back up, and I'm just going to select all these photos here. I'm going to remove the ratings and the picking. So I'm going to press U to remove the favorites, and then I'm going to press 0 to remove all these star ratings. So I selected all these photos by pressing Control or Command A. Another option to sort or find your photos is by using this search tool here. The search tool uses AI to scan your image. It is a hit or a miss, so it does need to be improved. So for example, if I type in water, nothing shows up. So it says no results were found. But if I type in landscape, here you can see 14 items were found. So these are landscape photos. And it looks like it did a pretty good job. This one's an astrophotography photo, but it can be considered a landscape. The other thing is if I go back here and let's say I type in a face, nothing shows up. Person, nothing shows up. So as I stated, it's a hit or a miss, but if I type in portrait, 2 items do come up. So let me just go back to the catalog. Actually, I'm in the recently searched, so let me go to all photos. And just before we finish this section off, another way of tagging these photos or rating them is just by clicking on this photo, and then we can put a rating here or marking them as a favorite or picking them, and then put a star rating here. And then you can just cull through these photos individually. Suppose you went on vacation and your catalog is a big mess and you want to organize your vacation or your travel photos. One thing I can do is put them in an album. So I can click on this photo here, and then I can shift click on this photo here. So we have 6 photos, and then I can click on this plus sign here, and then I can just rename this album Vacation. and I'll press enter. So now I have this vacation album here with these 6 photos to help me organize my images better. So this method is better than creating a separate catalog for each of your different types of photos. And I can go back to all photos here, and then I can click on this photo here, shift click on this photo here, and then I can add more photos into my vacation photos. What I can also do is I can go back to the all photos here. I can click on this photo. I can command or control click on this photo and command or control click on this photo here. I can press the plus sign beside the albums again. And this time I can name it as astrophotography. So let's just click on this photo here and just take a look at them. And while I'm in the albums here, there's also sorting options just like individual photos. So album name, recently updated, photo count, and so forth. There's also this custom order here. And let's take a look at this custom order. And what we can do is just move it around just like that if we want. Album name, descending, and so forth. So the other thing we see here is folders. So let me go back to all photos here. So what's the difference between albums and folders? So albums, you just add individual or a group of photos into an album or group them together. But folders, it represents a section or a folder on your computer, hard drive, external hard drive, or cloud storage. So for example, I can click on the plus sign here for the folders, and then I can go to my portrait folders. It's right here. And this portrait folders is in my cloud storage under Dropbox. Unlike, let me see, I think my Luminar Neo photos are also under Dropbox. But anyways, the portrait section here, or this portraits folder, I'm going to click on add folder here. So now I have the portraits folder that's on my hard drive and my cloud storage in the Luminar Neo database or catalog here. And that's just another way of organizing your photos or importing them and so forth. The other thing is I can remove the folders here. So I can right click on it. I can delete forever, or I can remove from catalog. So if I click on delete forever, it says the folder will be moved to the system trash. You can't undo this action. So I don't want to delete all these photos permanently. So I'll click on cancel. I'll right click on it and instead just remove it from the catalog. This folder will be removed from your Luminar catalog and all edits will be discarded. The source folder and original files remain on your hard disk. So that's just pretty much the difference between folders and albums. So folders is another great way of importing your photos into your catalog. Luminar Neo comes with a few free presets and we'll quickly take a look at them. I already have this photo selected. I'll click on presets. And this is a photo I took in Peru of Lake Peron or Laguna Peron. And what Luminar Neo does is it analyzes the photo and recommends the best preset packages. So here you can see it recommends the easy landscapes. So if I click on this, there's a few presets available. And while I hover my mouse over them, the image will show a preview of the actual preset. If I want to select the preset, I can just click on it. So I'll just click on this long exposure and you can see it's selected. And I'm just going to click on back right here on the presets and we'll take a look at the other presets that it recommends. So it recommends the scenery, and here's a few of the previews of them. It also recommends waterscapes and so forth. It also recommends some paid presets that are available, and you can also add the presets here or get more presets from here. Then we also have more presets here. You can see some essentials, landscapes, and so forth. So one thing I can do is if I like these easy landscape package or the easy landscapes preset set, I can click on this icon, the heart icon, to favorite it, and it'll come here under the collections of the easy landscapes. I can also click on this easy landscapes, and let's say I like this forest stream. I can heart it or favorite it, go back here, and we can see the favorites here. So these are the individual presets that I like, and these are the collections. Now, if I go to, let's say, this image here, let's see what it recommends. So it recommends the experimental presets, the monochrome, the influencer. So let's take a look at the influencer. And it's just loading here. It looks like I never use these presets. So we have the Nighthawks, Cozy Den, Eventide, and so forth. I'm going to click back here, and I'm going to go back to the first image that I had of this preset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the edit section here, and we're going to click on the edits, and we're going to see what this preset did. So we're going to click on edits, so you can see it added a little bit of vignettes, super contrast, and so forth. What I can also do is I can go to the tools section, and let's say I want to add some magic light. Let's take a look here. I can increase the intensity, increase the brush size, and let's say I just press over there and I will increase the intensity. And just like that, I added some magic light, I guess. Maybe the lighting is off. So what I'll do is I will reset this, and I'm going to choose something better that makes sense for this image. I'll go to the color harmony, and I'll add some brilliance. Nope, that doesn't look good. Maybe I'll just warm up the image like that. And then I will go to, let's say, the color balance. And let's make the highlights a little bit more magenta and reddish. Just like that. Maybe I like that, maybe I don't, but I'm just trying to explain how the presets work. And since I changed this preset, what I can do is I can click on these three dots right here. Click on it, and then I can save it as my preset. I'll just put my preset 1. I'll press enter. I'll click back here, and we can see in the preset section, my presets are here. So that's how presets work. You can use the free ones. You can add or buy free or paid presets, or you can even adjust the free presets that are already included and then customize them and save them yourself. If you guys want free presets, such as landscape or portrait presets or anything like that, make sure to leave a comment below, and I'll see what free presets I can offer. We'll take a look at how to crop in Luminar Neo. Right now I'm in the edit section. This is a photo I took in Bolivia, and I'm going to activate the crop section right here by clicking here. And now you can see the crop overlay with the rule of thirds grid. Now there's a few ways to crop. We can use this composition AI. Sometimes it's a hit or a miss, so I'll click on that. And this is the crop that it provided. I can also click on this horizon alignment. So I can click right here. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like it corrected the horizon unless you like this downhill look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mouse to this corner here, and then I can start rotating it just like that, and just to level the crop. I can also change the ratio, so I can go to a 16:9 ratio here. There's also this Facebook feed and Facebook cover, but I'll go to this 16:9 ratio, and that looks good. And then I can crop it as I please by moving the mouse around, clicking on the photo and dragging it, or dragging these corners and these sides just like that. What I can also do is reverse this aspect ratio. So there's one way to do it by clicking right here. So it reversed the aspect ratio. This is the portrait orientation for Instagram or TikTok, I guess. The other way of forcing or changing the ratio or reversing it, I can click, hold, and drag here, and then I can kind of like squeeze or push my mouse away into a landscape orientation, and then it'll automatically change just like that. Then of course we have some rotate and then the flip horizontally and vertically. And then I can just put this on the rule of thirds right here, this photo, and click apply. Now, if I want to reset any of my edits, including the crop, I can click on the ellipsis here and go to revert to original, or I can press the keyboard shortcut Command plus Shift plus R or Control plus Shift plus R just to reset any of the edits. And that's how you crop in Luminar Neo. We'll take a look at a few of the tools in the Essentials section. I'll start with the Develop tool here, which has this raw icon beside it. That's because this is a raw file, and you can see that by the .dng file here, or the file name. The one thing you may want to start with is when you're working on an image is correct any lens distortion. So I just clicked on this Develop Raw, and I'm moving down or scrolling down to the Optics section here. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on Auto Distortion Corrections. So I'm going to click here, and we can see some of the image has been, or most of the image has been improved, especially these panels on this rail track or train track. It's a little bit more straight. So let me show you the before and after view right here. So the lens correction is pretty good when you have leading lines or you're doing architecture photography, just to correct perspective. But in this photo, it wouldn't make a big deal. Like, you wouldn't notice a big difference if you didn't see the before and after. Like, the photo still looks fine, but it's just to keep that in mind to correct the distortion of your lens, just in case it looks a little bit off. And we can see with this photo, there's a little bit of vignetting in the corners as well. So I can correct that by using the de-vignetting tool right here, but I think I'll just keep it like that. Another thing you may want to do is apply some noise reduction. This photo looks fine in terms of noise and its sharpness, for me anyways, but if I go to the catalog here and I look at the ISO, it's at 250, so the ISO is not too high. And I'm just going to zoom into the photo by using the scroll wheel on my mouse, and we can see some of the noise here. Let me go to the split view here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the edit, go back to develop, and I'm going to go to the noise reduction of the luminosity, and I'm going to increase it. I'm going to overdo it and go to 100, and now you can see the noise has been reduced. There's noise here on the left, and on the right side the noise has been reduced, but I think I'm going to keep it around 40 here just to make sure I maintain some detail and sharpness. Another thing is you can remove some color noise if there is color noise. I don't think this image has color noise since it was taken in the daytime. Usually you need that during the night or with astrophotography or when there's like deep shadows. And this boost, it increases the aggressiveness of the noise reduction. So I think that looks good for now. And one other tool I want to show you, or a few other tools I want to show you is, let me just go back to this develop and minimize it. Is this Enhance AI. This Accent AI is really good. It analyzes the image and it improves the tonal range or the exposure and contrast and so forth. So if I increase it like that, you can see there's a lot more color here. The tone has changed, the exposure and the contrast has changed. I can combine it with the Sky Enhancer, but it'll overcook it. So I'll keep the Sky Enhancer at 0. And keep in mind, you don't need to remember what all these tools do. Just because some of them have like weird names or you wouldn't be familiar with it, even if you used previous photography software. So sometimes I have to read the Luminar Neo guide, or I just play with the sliders. So usually the best thing to do is play with the sliders. Another thing I can do with this image to maybe improve it is add a little bit of vignette here. So I can add a little bit of vignette. And let me see here. I'm going to just move it to the left here. And the size, I'm going to push in here, push in the vignette. I'm going to decrease the amount. So we already know there's a little bit of lens vignetting going on in the corners, but I'm adding my manual vignetting. So let's take a look at the before and after. before and after. So just with a few changes using the essentials section, we were able to improve this image. We can also add a little bit of structure and overcook it like that if we want. And then we can add some more detail and overcook it like that. You can see how the details in the rocks are shown a lot more, but it's kind of messing up the mountains here. So when you're using like structure and detail, you need to like balance it out and not overcook it. Or sometimes it's just better to use one of the tools rather than multiple tools. And that's pretty much it for the essential section. I will go over different tools between the essential, landscape, creative, portrait, and professional in separate individual videos, just because I don't want to make this tutorial too long. We'll take a look at a few of the landscape tools that are available. This is another photo I took in Bolivia, just outside the Salar de Uyuni, or outside the salt flats. The image looks interesting because it has a flat area here, has the mountains with a little bit of color, and it has the sky. But the sky, it doesn't have much action going on. So one thing we can do is crop the sky away a little bit more, maybe even the foreground, and focus in on the mountains. But what we can do is use Sky AI to automatically add a mask using its AI masking. And Luminar Neo includes a few free skies already, or you can buy some if you want, but there's plenty available online for free. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this sky here, which is a pretty bad sky compared to the rest of the foreground and the mountains. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this drop down here, and I'm going to look at a blurry, or try to find a blurry or a soft sky that doesn't have too much going on it. So I think maybe this sky right here. So this sky looks pretty good. I think it matches the foreground and the mountains. Does this image look real with its AI or not? That's the question. Regarding the masking itself, it did a pretty good job. If we need to change the orientation or refine the mask, we can go to sky orientation here. We can change it around. I think I'm going to reset it because it looked pretty good the way it was. And let me see here. I'm going to go to the mask refinement, and then we can change how the mask looks around here. So this kind of like changes the feathering and the lighting around here. But I think global at 30 or the default looks good. And this is the closed gaps, when there's like a gap between the sky and your foreground. So I think that looks fine. And let's see what else we can do here. Let's take a look at the scene relighting. Let's see if we can make the relighting a little bit better in this image. So let me increase the relight strength to try to match the sky. And I don't think that does anything good for this photo. So I will just leave the relight strength like that. And the saturation, it almost looks like it does nothing. So let me just leave that at 0 by double clicking on the slider. There's no human in this photo, so I'll leave that. The other thing I like doing is playing with this sky and using the landscape section is this Twilight Enhancer. It makes the image look really amazing. You got to be careful when you're using it. So I'm going to use this Mauve preset. I guess that's what it's called. This is one of my favorite presets and one of my favorite tools in Luminar Neo, the Twilight Enhancer. And watch what happens when I increase the amount. And it makes this image look pretty interesting. And then I can change the exposure just like that. I think I'm going to keep this at around 80. So I cranked it up. The sky looks pretty good. I like how the mountains is a little bit brighter here. And then what we can do is we can get out of the landscape area, go to creative, go to relight AI, and then we can start relighting this image a little bit better. So the brightness near, we can change it like that. And the brightness far, we can change it just like that. So I think I'm going to change where it is with the depth and put the brightness far around 30. Let's see the before and after. Before and after. I think I'm going to crank this down to about 15. And let's see what we can do with the brightness near. No, I don't like that. So I'll keep that at default of 0. So this is the before and after. It's a subtle change, so maybe I'll pump it up to about 25. Let's see the before and after. And let's see what I want to do with the advanced settings. If this does anything, I don't think I need to do anything with this. So what I'm going to do is go back to the landscape, go to the Twilight Enhancer. And one thing you got to be careful is you can see there's no amount available here. It's at 0. So one thing that can be a little bit tricky or confusing is sometimes when you adjust, or many of the times when you adjust these tools, and then you go back to adjusting them again, you need to go to the edit section here to see the adjustments you make, which can be kind of cumbersome or confusing. For example, if I click on Sky AI, it removes the Twilight Enhancer and the Relight AI. So it's a little bit hard to play with. Anyways, I'm going to go back to this Twilight Enhancer, just increase it just like that to make the image look a little bit more interesting. And then the develop and noiseless is always here. So I'll just go back to develop here under the edit section. And this is the starting point, so I don't actually like that. So I'll go back to tools. And then I'll go to the essentials, go to develop, I'll go to color, and I'm just going to increase the vibrance just like that. Now let's see the before and after. And maybe I'll increase the saturation a little bit and give it a better tint of magenta. And now this image looks a little bit more interesting. So the main thing you need to do is, after using some of the atmosphere AI, or the Twilight Enhancer, I should say, and the Relight and the Sky AI, is to adjust the coloring to your liking. Some people might find the blue here a little bit too drastic. The other thing we can do is go back to tools, go back to develop, go to the vignette. Let me see where it is. Actually, I think it's in the essentials. I forgot. Right here. And then I can just put a vignette like this. And just like that. So here's the before and after with the vignette. Now let's take a look at this image, how we did with a few of the landscape tools, the develop tool, vignette, and the Relight AI. So what do you guys think of this? We saw with this image that we were able to input or create a sky using Sky AI, where Luminar Neo automatically creates the mask for you, and then we can refine the mask using the mask refinement. However, many of the Luminar Neo tools have their own masking section as well, and we'll take a look at that right now. So I'm going to go back to this photo here. It has no adjustments, so it's been reset. And what I can do is go to the tools section, go to Enhance AI, and increase the Accent AI. So you can see the saturation's been quite increased in the sky. It's actually more saturated than the foreground here of the rocks and the train track. So what I can do is I can go to the masking section here, and Luminar Neo offers several masking options, including some mask AI options, so automatically mask for you. But I'll go over all of these masking options in different tutorials, but here I just want to take a look at the linear gradient. So I'm going to click on that, and it says click and drag to draw the gradient. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag, and the red overlay is where the mask is going to get applied to. And I'm just going to decrease the size or the feathering of this gradient, and I can rotate it just like that by clicking, holding, and then rotating once I have that double arrow here. And this is where the mask gets applied, the red overlay. So let's just go back here and let's take a look at the adjustments. So now you can see the sky is not as saturated. Let me show you the before and after, before and after. One other thing I can do is I can go to this masking section here. I can go to the mask actions, and I'm going to copy this mask. So I'm going to click on copy, and I'm going to click on show. So this is where it's being applied, just like that gradient we applied. And then I'm going to go to the color section. I'm going to increase the vibrance, increase the saturation, just like that. I'm going to go to the masking section here, go down to mask actions, and I'm going to paste it. So let's take a look at the before and after of the saturation. So now this image looks a lot better. So going back to this image here, one thing I can do is to make this image pop a little bit more. I can go to the essential section, go to the develop here, and then I can go to maybe the curves and then increase the curves like this, increase the midtones. And if you don't know how curves works, there will be a tutorial coming out on this for Luminar Neo, but I'm just going to increase the curves or the midtones like that. And then I'm going to decrease the green channel here and add a little bit of magenta just like that. Now I'm going to go to the masking section here. And then what I can do is I can click on the brush. Maybe I'll increase the size of this brush. I can also change the size of the brush by pressing the keyboard shortcut left square bracket or right square bracket. This is a common shortcut in many photography software to increase or decrease the brush size. The softness, I'll keep it at 100 and the strength at 100. And I'm just going to click right there. So that looks pretty interesting. So let's take a look at the before and after of how this looks. So it definitely adds a little bit of a boost there to the middle. Let me see if I can change the size of this mask just by changing the strength. No, so what I got to do is I got to go to 50. So this changes the flow or the amount of the opacity that gets applied to this mask. And then I can just paint around here. And now this looks a lot more interesting. So let's go to the masking section here, go to mask actions and show the mask that I created. So the middle part is at like 100% opacity or 100% strength. And then remember this outer part is around 50%. Another way I could have done that is by using the radial gradient, but I just wanted to demonstrate the brush for you. So let's just go to adjustments and let's take a look at the before and after to make this image pop. And that's how you use some of the basic masking options in Luminar Neo. If you want to duplicate an image to practice editing or compare edits, what you can do is go to the thumbnail view, right click with your mouse and click on create virtual copy. And now you can see there's two copies of this night sky image or the Milky Way, and there's this duplicate icon right here. I can also just right click on the main image and create virtual copy, and then there's also the keyboard shortcut right here, and just like that. And just for demonstration purposes, I can go to the tools section, I can go to color, just increase the saturation and vibrance on this image. And then with this initial image, what I can do maybe is go to the develop section, go to the magenta or the green channel, and then decrease it to add some magenta like that and so forth. And then we can compare the images just like that. There are a few ways to do noise reduction in Luminar Neo. So with this photo here of the Milky Way, the edits are reset. I can go to the develop tool here, and then I can use the noise reduction tool right here to reduce the noise. So I'll just zoom in here, go to the split view, increase the luminosity, which is the grain or the white noise. And then I can increase the color slider here to reduce the color noise. So this reduces luma, this reduces chroma. I don't really see too much chroma noise here, but just in case they're hiding, I'll just keep it at 15, and then I can increase the aggressiveness of the noise reduction. Or what I can do is I can go to the denoise section here. And let me go click on another photo here. I'll click on this first one. I'll zoom in. I'll go to denoise and do the same thing roughly here. And for all intents purposes, the denoise and the noise reduction, just by eyeballing it, they look pretty similar, or I think they're identical in my opinion. The other alternative is to use Noiseless AI to automatically adjust the noise reduction. So I will just click on the middle option here. It says use the middle adjustments for this image. So I'll click on that. So it's just going to process. The one other thing with Noiseless compared to denoise is that it does have these extra detail section and the sharpness slider here to have more control of the noise reduction. So let's take a look at the before and after here and just zoom in, and I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to remove the split view. So let's take a look at this image here. This has the manual noise reduction that I did, or the denoise, and this photo has the Noiseless AI. So just by comparing them, it does take a few seconds to process if I go back and forth with the Noiseless AI. And it looks like it takes away more noise, or it could be taking away some of these smaller stars compared to my manual noise reduction. So what I think I'm going to do is with the Noiseless, I'll go to edits and I'll just change it to low. And I think that'll look better, which it does. So I like that a little bit better. So it is hard to notice the difference between the custom denoise that you do yourself compared to the Noiseless, unless you like zoom in and zoom out yourself. So you may want to just download these photos that I have available. The link's in the description. I can also go to the catalog maybe and go to the largest view. And let's take a look here. Yeah, so it's this photo and this photo, but it's hard to see. This photo looks a little bit more soft with the Noiseless. But anyways, that's how denoise or noise reduction and Noiseless works. One thing I can do is go back to this edit section here. I can go to, let's say, let me just minimize the develop. Actually, I'll go to the tools. I'll go to the enhance section. I'll go to masking. I'll create a radial gradient. And I'm just going to click, hold, and drag, and then change the shape of this radial gradient just like that. And then I can increase the feather like that. And let me just rotate it a little bit better. And then I'll increase the size to just like that. Like that. And then I think I will decrease the feather to about that. And then decrease the size again. I'm just trying to get a good combination of the feather or the transition around here, and then a size just like that. Okay, anyways, I think that's good enough for now. So anyways, with the adjustments, I will increase the accent AI just like that. And then I'll go back to the masking tool. I'll go to mask actions. I will copy this mask and then I will go to color. I'll go to this HSL section. And I think I'm going to, let's say change the hue of this slightly to about that. And then I will increase the vibrance, increase the saturation like that. Now this image looks a lot better. So one thing I should have done maybe is correct the radial gradient to make this Milky Way pop a little bit more, but that's something you guys can try when you're testing it out. We can apply some interesting effects to this photo I took in northern Patagonia. The image has the mountain sky as well as some of the trees here. However, the image looks a little bit soft or washed out. So one thing I can do is I can duplicate this layer here. So there's the layers property. If I increase the opacity to 0, you can see it's transparent, but let me just go back to 100. I'm going to right click on this thumbnail view here and I'm going to click on duplicate layer. So now I have two images of the same photo or the same landscape or scene. And I can do some interesting things with layers without even touching any of these sliders or tools. So this is the same photo that's stacked on top of it. And what I can do is I can go to these blend modes and then I can use some of these different blend modes to put some interesting looks. The usual ones that I like are overlay, soft light, and hard light. These are the contrast blend modes. Talking about blend modes and how they work, that's a different tutorial. But what makes Luminar Neo pretty good, or what made Photoshop really popular about 15 to 20 years ago, was the ability to create layers and then adjust them using blend modes and masking. So let me just go to this soft light overlay or blend mode, and then I can decrease the opacity. So this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Or I can just click on hide layer, or I can show the layer again. And working with layers, masking, you can create some interesting adjustments, but this is just a small introduction to layers if you're not experienced with it. Another thing I can do is click on this plus sign here, and then there's some like light leaks that Luminar Neo provides, flares, light leaks, and so forth. And I think maybe I will just try adding this one here. No, I don't like that, so I will undo it by pressing Command or Control Z. Let me take a look at this here, the flares. So these flares look interesting, so it automatically applies this screen blend mode. I can decrease the opacity, and then maybe I will change the blend mode to lighten. Overlay, let me see, luminosity looks interesting, color looks interesting, and so forth. I think screen was just the best, and decrease the opacity just like that. So let's take a look at the before, hide this layer, and now show this layer. It gives like an interesting look. And we can see there's this branches or dead tree right here. We would need to crop that out. But that's how layers work in terms of how they can make your images more creative by just overlapping or building on top of the original image. And as I said, this is just an introduction to layers, but you can create some creative stuff with it. Let's try to make this image look a little bit more interesting using the creative tools, or at least some of them. The first thing I need to do is go to the crop section, and then just correct the horizon. And I think I'll just click apply with that. So that looks fine. And the next thing I want to do is first go to the essentials actually. Go to color, go to the saturation, increase the red hue, just like that. So it brings out these flamingos a little bit more. And let me just close this down. The one thing I can also do is I can maybe clean up this image a little bit. I can probably, let's say, remove this rock. This is just for demonstration purposes. So I can change the size of this brush over this guy, and click on erase. So that looks good. If the erase tool doesn't work, go to the catalog and use the gen swap, which works a little bit better. Anyways, I'll go back to the edit section. So this image looks a little bit better now. And maybe I'll use enhance AI slightly. No, I don't like that, so I will undo that. But I'll go to the creative section. So let me minimize this. And the one tool I like a lot is this mystical tool. It adds like this cool, soft glow to this image right here. So let's see the before and after. Actually, this is showing the color correction as well. So let me show you the before and after, clicking on this eyedropper tool right here, or this eye icon, I should say. So that gives a nice, soft, dreamy look to this image. And if I want to take this image a little bit further, I can go to the film grain and then give it the film look, or that nostalgic look, just like that. I can crank it up, but I think maybe like 10 looks a little bit better. So let's see the before and after. So it's a slight change. So maybe I'll bump it up to 21. And that looks definitely interesting. And to make this image look even better and put more focusing on the middle, I can go to the vignette. I will add some vignette, increase the size or decrease it like that, and then change the amount. Now this image looks a lot better. Let's see the before and after, or the split view. And that's how you can use the creative tools to make your image look more interesting. Luminar Neo has several tools. Some of them you will use more or you will like more than others. So if you want to save them as favorites, there's a way to do that. So for example, let's go to the landscape section, and I really like this Twilight Enhancer. So I can right click with my mouse and click on add to favorites. So you can see the Twilight Enhancer is here on the favorite section. And then maybe I'll go to creative. I'll right click on the mystical and add that to favorites. And now we can see the mystical is here as well. If I want to remove them from the favorites, I can just right click on it and remove from favorites just like that. And I can do that again to remove it from the favorites. There are a few ways to sharpen an image in Luminar Neo. This image I photographed in Patagonia outside of the town of El Chalten, Argentina. At its fit view, the image looks pretty sharp, but if we have an image where we need to crop in heavily and we notice it's not sharp, then we may need to do some sharpening. Or if we decide to print an image with a very large frame, we may need to sharpen it. So I can sharpen this image by going to the develop section, and then I can use the sharpness tools right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to show you the split view, and then I can increase the sharpness. When you're increasing the sharpness of a landscape photo, you got to be careful you don't sharpen the clouds or the noise in the image. And you can control that by balancing it with the masking tool here. If I move the masking tool all the way to 100, you can see the sky is not as sharpened, or I'm not sharpening the noise and the clouds. So you can see here, and if I reduce the masking, you can see how bad it is here. So you just got to balance that out between the sharpening slider and the masking slider. Another thing is you do have to be careful of the edge sharpening or the haloing effect. So this radius, it controls how much of the image or how much of the pixels are getting sharpened between the contrasty areas or between the black and white or the luminance values. So let me show you here. And one thing is you can see some fringing going on. So if I decrease and increase, you can see the fringing slightly changing, especially with the sharpening and the masking. So this is more of a lens issue actually. So one way I can correct this is by going to the optics tool and click on auto defringe. And you can see that blue color or that blue hue is gone. Let me deactivate this. And now you can see a little bit better. So you just got to be careful when you're sharpening landscape photos or edges. Sometimes there is fringing or chromatic aberration going on. So you need to be careful and play with these sliders to correct it. But this is a very extreme case because I'm zoomed in at almost 2000. But if I zoom in to around 210 or maybe even 500, the sharpening looks pretty decent. And you can't really notice that haloing effect even though it is there. So you got to balance it out with this radius slider, the sharpening, and the masking. But that's pretty much it, how the sharpness works. But I'm going to reset this image by pressing Ctrl plus Shift or Command plus Shift R. Or I can also go to the edit section and discard the edits. The other tool we can use is Supersharp. So I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to zoom in here. And let's see how Supersharp does. This is an AI tool. I'll just stick with middle here. So this is a universal option. So let's see the before and after. It's actually still working, the applying Supersharp. So now it looks pretty interesting. So now this image looks definitely sharp. This is a good way to save time. Just remember there's the fringing going on here. So you got to be careful. So you got to make sure you use the optics tool to correct that. So usually most of the time you'll use the Supersharp with universal unless you have some motion blur or you're photographing some moving sports or wildlife photography. And I've also used this face enhancer. It's a hit or a miss. So let me go to this image here. It looks pretty decent when you're zoomed out, but I took this with an iPhone and it's not that sharp. So I think this tool does need a little bit more improvement. So if I go to the low option here on the Supersharp, let me see, it's still working here. And you can see it's a little bit overcooked under the eyes here. This part looks good, but it does look a little bit more fake, this image. So with Supersharp, with the face enhancer, it is a hit or a miss. Let me go to the edit section. Let me show you the before and after. Before and after. So just be careful with the Supersharp when you're enhancing a face. We'll quickly take a look at the portrait section and try to improve this portrait I took with my iPhone 12 Pro. So I'll just minimize this and then open up the portrait section. Actually, I should crop this image. So I'm going to go to the crop tool. Maybe I'll select the 4x5 Instagram post or portrait orientation aspect ratio, and I'll just crop this in very tight. Maybe it's not the best crop, but I think it'll serve our purpose, and I'll click apply. And that looks good. Regarding the crop, you can see the image is not as sharp as I would like, but that's okay. So one thing I'm going to do now is go to the portrait section. There's like this studio light and so forth that you can play with. I'm not going to use this. What I am going to do is use the portrait bokeh and then add a little bit of bokeh here, maybe around 10. I think that looks good. One thing you need to be careful of is the hair here. Just at this part, it's bokehing or getting the hair out of focus a little too much. So what I can do is decrease the size of this brush to just about that, and then I can start painting in this area. And I think the hair looks a little bit better. And it's okay if some of the hair is out of focus. I think that looks good. And yeah, that looks good right here. Maybe it's probably better I decrease the amount to about 5. Let's see what it is at 0. Then go to 1. Then go to 7. And so forth. So I think 10 is okay. So you just got to be careful when you're playing with this bokeh and there's hairs or strands of hair sticking out, that you don't put a haloing effect or mess up the hair. You can see it is a little bit messed up here, but I think I can stick with that now just for demonstration purposes. I still see this halo effect here. So maybe put this in, decrease the amount to, let's say, 6. Let's see the before and after, So this part of the hair looks a little bit messed up as well. Looks a little bit better. And you wouldn't notice this as much or as obvious if you weren't actually using this bokeh tool and you were just looking at the photo for the first time with the edit. Anyways, I think I'm just going to keep it at that for the portrait bokeh. There's also, you can mess around with the focus and defocus of the brush controls and the softness to get a better accurate bokeh, but that's okay for now. The next thing is the face AI. If I want to relight the face just like that, brighten it up, or make it a little bit slimmer, I think I'll just slim it down to about 20. That looks good. The eyes are here. You can change the color of the iris. You got to be careful, otherwise it'll look a little bit weird. I think the hazel looks a little bit better, but I'm going to keep it at original. And there are dark circles, or very minimal, but I can try to remove it here just like that. So let's see the before and after. So it looks a little bit better. One thing is there is this strand of hair right here. So I can go to the essential section, go to erase, and try to decrease the size of this brush and get a very small brush and try to clean this up right here. It may or may not work, so it did an okay job. Let me reset it and decrease the size to 10. Was it at 10 or 11? But that's okay. Let me try again. Yeah, I think this looks better. There's this strand of hair as well, but that's okay. If that didn't work, then I would need to use Gen Erase. And let's go back to portrait. Where was I? I was at face. There's this eye enhancer, which adds a little bit of flare and glow or shine to the eye. Then there's the eye whitening. I think I can white it a little bit. This area called the sclera, I think. There's also this enlarge eyes, which gives it like this anime look that some people like, or the cosplay look, but I think it's overdone. And let me see here, I'm gonna close this. There's the mouth, lip saturation and so forth. I think I like that the way it is. The skin is probably something you would want to use to reduce some of the blemishes or soften the skin or give it a nice glow effect right here. I think I'll keep it at around 30. Let's see the before and after. Maybe I'll crank it up to 50. Let's see before and after. So that looks good. There's also the shine removal, and then there's the, well, let's test out the shine removal. So it's removing the shine out of the nose right there, and some of the shine up here. So I think I'll keep the shine removal at around 79. That looks good. And the skin defects removal, it works pretty good. Let me show you the before and after. There's like this spot right here, this spot right here, and let me activate it. So that's gone. And I think there's a few other spots that it removes that you can't really see right away. Or maybe that's the only spot that it removes. Anything else you would need to remove manually with the erase tool, like here. But that looks okay. There's this body tool to shape the body. And then there's the high key lighting right here. And so forth. But I will just reset that. And I think I like how this portrait looks. It is a little bit on the soft side, but still pretty decent. Let's take a look at the before and after. The before and after. So you can notice a lot of the blemishes have been removed. The oily look has been removed. And that's how you use the portrait tool. I'll go and do another tutorial on the studio light to give you a better idea of how it works and how you can use it in your workflow. Let's make this image pop using some of the professional tools. The first thing I'm going to do is crop this image, and I'm going to just use a freeform. So you can see there's a lot of distraction going on here, so it won't be the best crop because I'm going to be cropping out some of this dress, but that's okay. And I don't need too much of this back wall there, so I'll go like that. And maybe something like that. I think that looks okay. So I'll put the face on this rule of thirds line right here, and I'll just click accept. And like the previous portrait photo, I also took this with my iPhone 12 Pro. And it's interesting because from far away, it does look a little bit soft, but that's okay. And the first thing I want to do is try to whiten up this teeth. So I will go to the portrait section. I will go to face, and I have the teeth whitening. So I will just whiten it up. And it's okay that I don't have it completely white because this photo does have a slight warm look. If I did want to whiten it up more, I would need to use some masking and then use some of the essential or color tools to desaturate the teeth, but this looks fine for now. Now let's go to the professional section here. And what I'm going to use is the super contrast. And I'm going to use this mid-tone contrast to add contrast to the midtones, obviously, just like as it sounds. And you can see as I adjust the mid-tone contrast, it gives like a pop or like a saturation to this image. And I don't want to overdo it, so I think I'll keep it at 20. Let's see the before and after. I'll go to the split view. So you can see the saturation increasing in the dress. And I could increase it a little bit more to 30, so that looks good. Now the midtone balance, it controls the midtone or what's considered the midtones. So for example, take a look at the levels section here, how it's changing. And it's changing what's considered the midtones, just like that. So this is called the levels or the histogram. And I will do another tutorial on that. But I think I will keep it at around 20. Yeah, 20 looks good. Let me move the split view away. So let's take a look at the before and after. Before and after. So with this super contrast, using the midtone contrast, I made this image look a lot more colorful or saturated. The next thing I want to do is go to the color harmony. And let's see this color contrast. No, I don't like that. Let's take a look at brilliance. Nope, I don't like that. The one thing I do want to do is with the color balance here, I'm going to go for the shadows. And since this dress is on the reddish orangish side, I'm going to select the complement cyan red here and just move the shadows towards the cyan, just like that. I don't want to overdo it, but I'm going to show you how it looks when it's overcooked. And maybe this is not even overcooked. Some people might like this look. It's got a vintage look. Obviously, it's a vintage dress and the table and the books look antique, but I think I'll keep it at -40. Let's take a look at the before and after. Before and after. Before and after with the cyan look to the shadows. So I think I like how that looks. And I will go to the essentials section here. Go to the, where is it? The develop section, and then go to the curves and just slightly give it a slight boost to the mid-tone exposure like that. I will decrease the shadows slightly here, decrease the highlights like that. Let's see the before and after. I think that's too much, so I need to decrease it a little bit more. And that looks better. Before and after, before and after. So this increasing the mid-tone exposures here, it does kind of like remove some of the detail, but that's okay. I like the more exposure or the more highlighted look. And then I can go to the vignette, and then I can decrease the corners there. And let's take a look. I don't want to do it too much because our head is at the top there. So I think I'm going to go to around -27, reset the size. Let's see the before and after. I think -40 looks good. This is the before and after, so it's a slight shift. And let's take a look at the before and after with the change, mainly using the professional tool with the super contrast and the color balance. What do you guys think? If I want to copy and paste the edits of this image to similar images, what I can do is just press Control-C or Command+C on this photo here. So I'll just press that. And then I can click on this similar photo, and then I can Control or Command click on this similar photo and then just paste it by pressing Command+V or Control+V. And now we see the edit has been applied. Keep in mind that the crop hasn't been applied. So if we take a look at this photo and go to the edits, these are all the edits that we did, but it doesn't have the crop. So the crop is something you'll have to do manually, but that's how you copy and paste edits in Luminar Neo. One thing we haven't touched on is the rendering of light and color from a DNG or any type of camera raw file. So this is a landscape that I took in Patagonia in the town of Bariloche. It's a DNG file. And if we go to the edit section, we can see this develop raw section. And if we want to change how the raw file is rendered, we can change it using the camera profile. Luminar Neo has the default camera profile here, but we can change it to different standards, or the Adobe standard, portrait, faithful, and so forth, or you can add your custom. There's also the camera landscape. So if we show the before and after, you can see this camera landscape gives this image a nice boost in saturation. So if you're working with like one or two specific cameras or one or two specific genres of photography, you may want to play with the camera profile and then adjust the exposure and so forth to your liking to get a head start. You would just make a few subtle changes to some of these settings and then also choose which camera profile you prefer, and then maybe save it as a preset. But for me, I usually just work with the default profiles that the software provides, including Luminar Neo, Lightroom, Capture One, and so forth. This is just to give you guys a basic idea of color rendering and how the image is displayed. It's usually more important when you're printing a photo, and that requires soft proofing, which is another topic. But just keep in mind, there's always camera profiles. So if you take a photo and once you open it up in Luminar Neo or any other software and it doesn't look like what the LCD screen or the JPEG image that you saw on your camera, then you may just want to test out the camera profile. When I've completed my editing and I want to export my photos, you can click on one photo or click on one photo and shift click on a range of photos. And then what you can do is right click on them and then go to export. You can see there's a few share options as well, export to, but usually you'll go to export, or you can click on this export icon right here and go to new export. And then you'll be able to choose which folder you want to export the photos into. And you want to make sure you have the show options or the extra options here. That way you can choose the format. Most of the time you're going to be choosing JPEG, and then you can resize the image. Usually I'll use like a long edge resize to limit the maximum length or width of the edge, especially if I'm putting it on a blog post. Sharpen, usually I don't do any edge sharpening to my final output, so I keep it at none, but you guys can test that out. And most of the time, especially for web, the sRGB color space is good, usually for printing as well, unless your printer provides you with its own color profile. And once you're ready, you just click on save. I'm going to click on cancel here because I don't need to save these JPEG photos. Another thing you can do is you can also export with your previous settings if you want. And other than that, exporting photos in Luminar Neo is pretty straightforward. Luminar Neo is a very powerful AI editor. So once you open up a raw image, you can go the classic route of editing the raw file and making some minor adjustments to the exposure, color, sharpness, and noise reduction, and then clean up the image using some erase tools right here, like the erase or the gen swap and so forth. Or you can start with erasing or cleaning up the image, then go to the develop section. Or the other option is let AI do most of the work and start with some of the landscape or the creative tools and so forth and the professional tools. One thing to keep in mind is you do want to make sure Luminar Neo does most of the heavy lifting for you. That's what its purpose is. The other thing is many of these tools overlap just like any other photography software. So you want to make sure you don't do a redundant edit of like using the Enhance AI, Accent AI, then going overboard with the saturation and the vibrance, and then maybe going to the color harmony and doing something weird with that. So a lot of these tools do overlap, so you just want to use a few of these tools to make your image pop. And that's it for this Luminar Neo tutorial. If you guys enjoyed this video, you know what to do. And as always, live easy, sleep breezy, and stay lovely.